description. But it makes it easier when you see that students at this university, for example, are perfectly capable and perfectly willing to go ahead and do something about something as overwhelming as simply hunger. You describe in the word hunger, it has more connotations than I can describe in one evening, no less one short talk, and I won't. But it extends from a very minimum idea to an overwhelming maximum idea that I don't think people really understand. I was 4 years old when my parents moved into a housing project in Philadelphia because my dad was a student. My mother raised children. And students didn't make money, and neither did people who raised children. And so my mother took me one day to a place, and we stood in line, and we had grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup. And we came home with milk and cheese and butter. And I said, wow, this is the coolest place ever because we got free food and we brought free food home. And my mother was just horribly distraught. Her husband was an educated man. He was a doctor. He was going to be a medical doctor. And he was finishing school, but he couldn't work back in the 1990s. And so, just a few years ago. And so my little sister and I, didn't understand what it meant. We didn't really feel the hunger, but my parents had no food in the house, and this was a free way to get food, and my mother was mortified, horrified. And later on in her life, when she became the wife of a doctor, she gave a lot of money to these kinds of causes, and I always knew why. She wasn't that charitable of a person, to be completely honest. But it didn't really strike me at all until a few years later when my dad was then, as a doctor, drafted to go into the military during the Vietnam War. We ended up in the Republic of Panama. And we lived in Panama City, Panama, which was a charming city at the time, except for the Civil War that was going on. And we drove on and off the base every day. And right outside the base, running along the giant fence that separated the American sovereign territory known as the Canal Zone from Panama City, Panama, were a series of spigots of faucets about a mile away from each other. And clustered around those faucets were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of crates, cartons, makeshift shanties that were typically blown away by heavy rains and then rebuilt the next day. And these little villages that built around these faucets were typically referred to by the Americans who lived in the Canal Zone as Hollywood. And Hollywood was the abject poverty. It was the abject hunger. It was the abject pain and suffering that was so different from going to a soup kitchen in North Philadelphia and coming away with a grilled cheese sandwich that I didn't understand. It made no sense to me. I said, what's the deal with this? And my parents said, these people are super crazy, ridiculously, unbelievably poor. And I said, I still don't understand what that means. We were poor, but we had a car. These people don't have anything. They didn't have nothing. What happens when it rains? They get wet. What happens when they get sick? They die. What happens when there's no more food? They starve. And there was no way a 7-year-old comprehends that. But it stuck with me. And when I was 13 or 14, I worked for a relief agency at a middle school because I had the opportunity to. I joined the Hunger Project when I was 17 years old. And ultimately, after dabbling in the food service industry for 20 years, I decided to teach political science with a focus on things like human rights and international development. And it never occurred to me that maybe there was some sort of a legacy there. Maybe I saw something early enough to make me go, hey, wait a second, this stuff matters. Because I teach a lot of things. But to be able to say in front of students in a classroom it matters is very different than to be able to say to a bunch of people who come on their own on a weekday night when they could be doing a lot of other things, watching basketball, doing homework, hanging out with their friends or chatting on Facebook, and say it matters is gratifying. How it matters to you is obvious in the sort of immediate short term. But how it matters to the world, well, that's a pretty compelling set of ideas that we've not enough time to imagine. A world of people who cannot afford to eat, who cannot afford medicine, who cannot afford to live safely, is a world of danger for them. It's a world that threatens billions of people every day with death. 1.4 billion people live below about $1.75 per day in this world, and if you raise that to $2 a day, it's almost 2 billion people. That's not enough to provide any of the things that this group seeks to provide. What does that mean? It means they die, which is terrible and tragic. Worse than that is they become desperate and they threaten other people around them. And I don't mean worse than that because dying isn't bad enough, but it means more people will die. It means disease will spread. It means wars will be fought. It means states will be torn apart, and politics and culture and any other divisive issue that we can think of will be made that much more divisive, not because it is, but because we're desperate to get something out of this, whatever this is. And so hunger isn't just I'm hungry. It's not just I'm starving. It impacts you and then the next person and the next person in a number and a multitude of ways, to the point that when it finally impacts us, whether it's just a PowerPoint presentation or what we see on the news, we're not really sure of what it is that it's actually doing to us. It disturbs us, but you can hit the remote. It disturbs us, but the class ends in 50 minutes. It disturbs us, but I'm done in about 120 seconds. But you guys are here, and that's a fantastic thing. What would be better if there were more of you? What would be better is if we could fill this room every night with a new group completely to the top of the bookends and just say, raise a little bit of money. Do a little bit of work. Add it up. Do it here. Do it at George Mason University. Do it at Georgetown University. Do it at George Washington University. Do it at whatever university begins with a G. And then go to H and I and J and do it everywhere. Let American college students lead the way. Go ahead. Show the world that you're not just on Facebook. Well, it's not possible. Or is it? The message that I would say is impact. I can give you stories and statistics and facts because I have degrees and I've studied this stuff. Whoop-de-doo. That I have the opportunity to tell you there is one thing you can do that goes beyond what you think you can do. Is all each one of you has to do is just tell one more person. Do this. Raise $1, go to one event, buy one donation, feed one person. And the exponential impact of that is in fact an exponential impact. We never think that one person can do anything. But if one person can do one thing, and that chain doesn't stop, then the goal of ending world hunger becomes a real goal, not a, oh, these girls are doing such a great job. Gosh, it'd be good if we could do something. This is something. This is something that can be done. It can't be done by one group. It can't be done by one person. It certainly can't be done by me. But what I'm terribly impressed by is that the message doesn't change. The message doesn't say, well, we can't raise $35 million next week, so we're screwed. We can't do it. It's not worth it. Just don't do it. It's no, we're just going to keep doing this. Because every single person that we turn, every single person that we convince, that can then say to whoever, and to whoever, and to whoever, can create that chain of events that finally makes the world realize, oh, wait a second, it's not that cool to watch this happen. It's not that cool to go, well, that's over there, and I'm over here, and it's bad, but I won't do anything. Doing something is not that hard. But what you guys have done is hard, and it takes a lot of time and effort. And so, again, for the third time, I will commend you. Again, for the third time, I will tell you, anytime I can help in this teeny, very insignificant way, I will. And to all of you who've come out to support them, do it. And support the idea that this is an achievable goal worth your little tiny bit of time. Thanks very much again. Thanks.
Thank you so much for coming out today, Professor Saladino. Next, we have a video for you about the humanitarian endeavor, as well as an invitation to our upcoming event, Journey to the Pledge, this Friday.